Aloha class, this is exercise 10-2, dropping or retaining a segment. The Regal Cycle Company manufactures 3 types of bicycles, a dirt bike, a mountain bike, and a racing bike. Data on sales and expenses for the past quarter follow. And so these are the expenses and the data, the income statement for each segment or division, and then the consolidated income statement. Management is concerned about the continued loss shown by the racing bikes and wants a recommendation as to whether or not the line should be discontinued. The special equipment used to produce racing bikes has no resale value and does not wear out. Show production and sale of the racing bikes. Should production and sale of the racing bikes be discontinued? Explain, show computations to support your answer. And so we'll just do part 1 right now, and then we'll get into part 2. I've copied over the answers by hand on each of the divisions, and they're concerned about racing bikes because it is at a net operating loss. Whenever we're dropping a segment, so there's a decision rule, we should only drop the segment if its profit would increase. So this is a different problem from the slides, but only drop a segment if the profit would increase, or it puts us at a better position than it was continuing to operate the segment at a loss. So if the profit's going to increase, then we will drop the segment. If it will not increase, if it'll decrease, then we should keep continuing on with the segment. So we're going to compare the contribution that would be lost to the cost that would be avoided if the line was dropped. So we're going to lose out on that contribution margin, but we can avoid some of the costs, such as a division or a segment manager, specific advertising to that product. We can avoid that cost because that product is no longer operating. We're not selling that product anymore. So if we have a similar income statement like this, we're going to identify which costs are avoidable and which ones will continue on no matter what, which are irrelevant to our decision making, which ones are avoidable, which ones are not avoidable. And then we're going to have a similar contribution margin approach where we're going to look at contribution margin lost if the division or segment is dropped, and then less fixed expenses that can be avoided. So what can we avoid? And see if there's a net disadvantage or advantage. And so I'm going to hide these other parts of the income statement, and we're going to look at contribution margin lost. So we're going to lose out on $27,000 by getting rid of this segment. So that's what we're losing out on. Advertising traceable. So can we avoid this cost if we get rid of this product? Yes, we can avoid it because it's specifically traceable. So we are going to add that. So if we go back to that formula, so remember this is a negative number, what we lost, and then we're going to add any avoidable or less fixed costs that can be avoided. A positive number here. Depreciation of special equipment said there was no resale value. You can't get rid of it. You're going to incur that cost no matter what. And so we cannot avoid that. That is unavoidable. So not going to be in this equation because it's unavoidable here. Salaries of production line managers, you can avoid that because you don't have to pay those people anymore because there's not the same line or product. Production line managers, allocated common fixed costs. They're going to continue on no matter what until you get a new product in. This is what is allocated to the specific product, so you cannot avoid that. And the problem didn't say that you could avoid that at all. So with this information, we're losing out on $27,000, and then we are going to save $6,000 and save $10,000. Okay. And so this is our net, and this is a disadvantage, so I'm just going to put net disadvantage. So we're going to lose out on an additional $11,000. So we're already losing $9,000. We're going to lose out on an additional $11,000. And so this is just the change, what would happen. And so in total, if you drop the segment, you would lose out on a total of $20,000 in total. So this is kind of your shortcut answer. That would be your solution for this problem. You would say the net disadvantage for part 1 would be 11,000 disadvantage. If you wanted to see this out, so if you were to drop racing bikes, we can see what's happening if we drop the racing bikes. So remember, if we drop them, we would no longer have sales. We would no longer have variable expenses either. We would have no contribution margin. So we're making no money. We also don't have to pay for advertising because we're not making this product. Depreciation, you're still going to have to pay for no matter what. So you can't get rid of that. You've already bought the special products. It's a sunk cost. You still have to pay for the depreciation, not pay for the depreciation, but expense the depreciation over time. So we can't get out of that expense. Salaries for production line managers, you don't have to pay them because they're no longer working, but you're still going to have to pay those allocated common fixed costs because it's specific to this division or this segment. And so in total, you are still going to have to pay for these costs. So with 0 contribution margin, and we have all of these fixed expenses you still have to pay for, dropping the racing bikes would result in $20,000 loss from dropping the racing bikes. And we knew that because we were already losing $9,000, an additional $11,000 would give us a $20,000 disadvantage, and $20,000 loss from dropping the bicycles. So this is your answer here, and just know that that's how we got from here to here. From here to here was that contribution margin loss, and then we add, or we less fixed expense, fixed costs that can be avoided, and these are a positive number here. Okay, so that's part 1. Part 2 says, recast the above data in a format that would be more usable to management in assessing the long-run profitability of the various product lines. And so if you think about our common fixed costs, they shouldn't be allocated to specific divisions or segments. So they can't be allocated. This could be like the CEO salary. They shouldn't be allocated to specific divisions. So for long-term profitability, this $60,000 of allocated common fixed costs should not be allocated because it's common and should not be allocated. So for long-term profitability, I'm going to hide this information, and we're going to not allocate out those common fixed costs, but keep them together as a common fixed cost. And that can help us see which division is really unprofitable, or if it's just that common fixed cost that they can't control from that specific division and they can't overcome. So take out that $60,000. So we're going to take out the $60,000 and not allocate it out to those specific lines, those specific divisions. So let's sum up all of our traceable fixed costs. So these would be traceable fixed costs. So we're going to sum them up. So I summed up all of these traceable fixed costs here. And I'm going to separate out that $60,000 common fixed expense. So these are traceable, and now we want segment margin. So segment margin would be our contribution margin and less our traceable fixed expenses. And I can use that same formula all across. And remember, we're not going to allocate these. These are just going to be common fixed expenses, which was $60,000. And so our net operating income, we will calculate our net operating income segment margin for the whole company less our common fixed expenses. So this would be more appropriate because we know that common costs should not be allocated to specific divisions or segments. And then we look at our segment margin for racing bikes, and they are profitable when we take out those common fixed expenses. So this is what this problem is requiring, to pull out those common fixed costs. And we can see that this racing bikes division or segment is profitable without that common fixed expense.